because I did not celebrate International Women's Day. I neither have the moral courage nor standing to celebrate International Women's Day. For me, it is a day of shame that evokes feelings of extreme guilt and moral culpability for being a part of a very oppressive patriarchal system. This is a guilt that has been festering within me and has deeply overburdened my soul. We are 13 siblings from one mother, 8 sisters, 5 brothers. Of my 8 sisters, none could make it to secondary school. Of my 8 sisters, none has been to college, and only 3 could make it to secondary school. In contrast, I have 2 master's degrees from Oxford. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, what you just heard is absolutely true. Gender inequality in its ugliest possible form is a thing, is a bitter reality in 21st century. I grew up in one of the most violent and poorly governed parts of the world, the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. I was a supporter and sympathizer of Taliban. I vaguely remember not celebrating, but I vaguely recall that I was happy when the tragic incident of 9/11 happened. I also thought that girls perhaps should not go to school. And the worst bit is that my first encounter with education didn't change these beliefs and thoughts. Instead, school curriculum, particularly secondary school curriculum, and the way it was taught by some teachers, not only reinforced some of these biases, but also helped me develop some new prejudices. And as late as 2008, when I was a first-year undergraduate student, I believed that girls should be allowed to work only in certain professions. I assumed that educated girls or educated women have loose morals. And the irony is that I had all these assumptions about girls without ever having interacted with an adult girl that was not from my family. What happened subsequently, I'll try to summarize it as quickly as possible. There were 2 triggers that happened that changed my life. Number one was when I went out of my city and went to Lahore to attend a college, I encountered educated women. I encountered adult girls, let alone educated girls, for the first ever time in my life. It was a cultural shock for me. I saw these talented, bright, and outspoken girls in class who were outdoing boys like me in every possible way. The experience challenged my preconceived notions and ideas. And as I began to interact with girls, with my classmates, I gradually realized that most of my preconceived notions were not only wrong, but based on a deeply flawed understanding of the words like morals, honor, character. While this was happening, I simultaneously was going through another transformation. So within Pakistan, I belong to an ethnic minority. I grew up in an area that is the hub of religious militancy. When I came to Lahore, I faced immense stereotyping and ethnic profiling for coming from an area which was a hotbed of terrorists. I was singled out at security checkpoints, and because I also came from an ethnic minority, the school curriculum, the university curriculum, also wasn't very favorable to sort of ethnic minorities in the country. So what had happened was I suffered from an identity crisis. This identity crisis turned out to be a blessing in disguise for me. And what did I do to come out of that identity crisis? The first thing was frustration. The first thing was deep mental frustration and trying to look for solutions and answers, and there were no quick solutions. And that is where teachers come. That is where mentors come. I was lucky to have access to some mentors who helped me steer through that crisis and come out of it safe and strong. And in addition to mentors, the other most important thing that many young people like myself need to understand is I changed my reading sources. The moment I started reading books other than those prescribed in the curriculum, I never looked back. I think that is the best thing that has ever happened, that could have ever happened to me. So those critical reading sources changed my perspective and helped me question the dominant narrative, the hegemonic dominant narrative, identity narrative, the narrative on gender, the narrative on history. I'm sharing these lessons with you in the hope that today, as you take your next steps in your life, you can learn the lesson that I have learned over the past few years. And now I'll identify two important lessons for the teachers here. Number one is very important to remember critical junctures. During high school, undergrad, almost all students pass through a stage, a critical juncture that I call, where they are in a shock, in a state of confusion, when their established notions, their preconceived ideas get challenged. Those are the moments, those are the make or break situations, when they are looking for answers, and that is the moment where teachers need to proactively identify and help those students come out of those situations. There can be multiple triggers for these critical junctures. It can be exposure to new ideas through a school, through book, through meeting new people, or it may be a particular incident that leaves you disturbed. In particular, young people from marginalized backgrounds, from minority groups, are more likely to experience this. And then the role of teacher as mentors. Teacher can play an extremely valuable role as mentors. They have to show empathy and understanding, and they need to be more proactive and help identify students or help them get out of these crisis situations. I'll finish my talk with one, in my view, which is one of the best ideas that I have learned. Now, this is my personal experience, but now the challenge here is we need built-in triggers in the education system. How do we inculcate these triggers in the education system so that every student, that can push every student to come out of that comfort zone? Everyone may not go through the same circumstances that I did. So we need to have some built-in triggers in the education system. They can be multiple, but in my view, one key thing. Most of you may know about John Rawls. So John Rawls is one of the most influential moral and political philosopher of 20th century. He came with a wonderful idea in his book, The Theory of Justice, the idea of the veil of ignorance. So basically, Rawls suggests that you imagine yourself in a position that he calls the original position. The original position is when, this is a fantastic scene, a group of people are gathered to plan their future society. They are trying to hammer out the details of what will essentially become the social contract. And in this original position, the future citizens do not yet know what part they will play in the upcoming society. So Rawls asked us to assume ourselves behind a veil of ignorance. Behind this veil, none of us knows anything about ourselves, about our natural abilities, or our position in the society. We know nothing about our race or class. And with this ignorance, we try to draft a social contract to determine what rights will these different positions have. And Rawls believes that because with this veil of ignorance, I can end up as an LGBT, I can end up to be a poor person, I can end up as a girl, I can end up as an ethnic minority. When people are drafting the social contract with this veil of ignorance in mind, that they can end up in either position, they would agree to a social contract that will be fair and just. So my request to all the teachers, to UNESCO, we should have this veil of ignorance thought experiment in every class, because it will help us understand the perspective of others. It will inculcate empathy in students. And this experiment behind the veil of ignorance would only help us understand why people from marginalized backgrounds, why people from minority groups feel the way they do. With this in mind, I don't mean to be pessimistic here. I shared my story with the hope that you will learn something from it. And I'll conclude it with the thoughts that today, yes, I did not celebrate International Women's Day because of the guilt. But my older sisters couldn't go to university. My younger sister is bound to go to college. My nieces are going to college. And I was a supporter of Taliban. But today, I'm a strong voice against religious extremism. I'm against majoritarian identity narratives. And I'm a firm believer in gender equality, and I call myself a feminist. Thank you so much.